Hey everyone, Blake here. So as you can see behind me, the giant pile of parts is gone. In fact, I have put it all into one shiny case and it does boot and I was able to get Windows on it. So we've been successful. I'm going to go into the build video. I do want to let folks know the format of this is going to be a little different than usual. I normally try to do everything in one take and don't fast forward and don't cut or anything like that. In this case, there's a lot of sections that are, in my opinion, pretty boring, and I don't want to force people to go through that, so I'm going to be fast forwarding through that. And then there's also areas where the camera work is really tough because it's a black case, black motherboard, black screws, everything is black, and getting the lighting and the camera work on that, it turns out, is really hard. So, you know, this might be one of those things where if you're really interested in building your own computer, there are YouTubers out there who have well-lit studios specifically designed to do that kind of video, and they're going to be higher quality. But I did promise that I was going to do the build video, and I know a couple people are excited about it, so I am going to go ahead and put this together and show you how it goes. All right. So this is a little bit of a different perspective on my workspace. A long-standing tradition of mine is to actually do a computer build on the carpet and not touch anything that is conductive and grounded so that I don't set off any static shocks, or at least not near the build. So I will be building here on the carpet. I know a lot of people cringe when I do that kind of thing, but it has really worked for me for many, many years. So that's the way I do. I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about the equipment and what we're doing and in what order. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is start unboxing some stuff. Let's see, other tools that we have, and we'll go through the parts here in a second. Have a standard computer toolkit. Most of the tools and those kinds of things you don't actually really need anymore. It's pretty much down to having a good ratcheting screwdriver is your friend, and a good pair of scissors for opening boxes and or pesky clamshells, a light, because it is always helpful to have additional light when you're doing a computer build. I have that off to the side, and when I turn that on, I'll try to make sure not to blind the work camera down here. And then a working computer is always, whenever you do a computer build or major computer fix, part swap, that kind of thing, if you have a non-working computer, one of the most valuable things that you can have in your possession is a working computer for Googling things, pulling up help and or drivers and or BIOS patches, that kind of stuff. Which for this build we might need to do a BIOS patch to get the CPU to work. So having an up and running machine, which that's the one I'm doing this recording on, is going to be really useful. So I'm going to move this plastic mat for my chair, and then we are going to get started in earnest. Now, let's take a look at some of the equipment. First and foremost, this is my Founders Edition 2080 Ti. It's been a good graphics card. I've really liked it, and there's no upgrades, and it was a really expensive card. This makes up almost half the cost of this machine. So we are reusing that from my old machine to my new machine. That's pretty much the only part we're reusing. Computer repair kit. So it has various heads and whatnot. Really, though, it just comes down to the Phillips anymore. They have chip puller and tweezers and stuff like that. Most of that isn't useful. Little screwdriver that is handy in case you drop a screw. And let's see here. I do like this screwdriver just because it's narrow, so it can get into tight spots. And then I also have on here a little cleaner doohickey that has like this little brush head. I don't know what it's called, but it also has this like chisel shape to help clean around things. Not super useful for this kind of build, but that does go in my computer kit. Now you can certainly get really good computer repair kits and stuff from iFixit, but the truth of the matter is, with modern systems the way they are, you don't need very much at all, especially since with modern hard drives, a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing with the M2 SSDs and stuff, there's not even cables. So, all right, that's that. Good pair of scissors. I got Westcott non-stick scissors. I didn't really think of non-stick scissors, but they go through tape and other sticky things. Great, I love them. All right, so equipment-wise, Windows 10, you know what that is. Samsung 970 Evo Plus. This is a very fast solid-state drive. And then for RAM, I have 32 gigabytes of RAM. In this case, I have 4 8-gigabyte sticks. I would have preferred 2 16-gigabyte sticks, but they didn't have those at the shop. And instead of waiting for a couple of days, I just couldn't. I'll just use up all 4 RAM slots on this motherboard because I don't see myself needing more than 32 gigabytes of RAM anytime soon. This RAM was very, very specifically chosen for this build. I looked at the online. When you're looking at a motherboard, you can find RAM that has been certified to be work well with that motherboard. So it's the qualified vendor list, the QVL. And you can use that to find RAM that's going to work very well. So this RAM was specifically recommended for that motherboard. At the same time, I have also checked the speed. So this is 3600 megahertz RAM, which is pretty useful for these AMD processors in particular. The AMD processors this generation seem to care about memory speed more than Intel ones do. So I made sure that I had some nice fast RAM. EVGA, this is a really nice 80 plus gold certified power supply, so that should deliver reliable, nice clean power. This bad boy right here, I had to wait in line outside of the computer shop for an hour to get my hands on 3950X. So this is 16 cores, 32 threads of processing power. And that's actually what, for machine learning, I'm really looking for. Because when we do reinforcement learning, the kind of machine learning we do, you need CPU power because the environment, your actor takes an action and you have to respond to that. So unlike many types of machine learning where you're GPU bound, for a lot of reinforcement learning, you're actually CPU bound. Now, when it does the actual updating of the policy, the backprop kind of stuff, that can use the GPU, but that's actually a relatively small amount of the time used to do some of the reinforcement learning stuff. All right, what else do we have? This is an EVGA closed loop cooler, so this is an all-in-one water cool, which came recommended on the AMD recommended water cooling. So I'm going to try an all-in-one water cooler. I've never done that before, so we will see how that goes. Fingers crossed. And then the motherboard is a X570 Steel Legend. In this case, since I don't overclock my processors, and since I'm not going SLI or anything like that, there's no real advantage for going for a really expensive motherboard. So buying a decent quality motherboard with good solid components on it should be fine. So this is what that is without going like crazy overboard for people who need extra thermal capacity or whatnot, extra cooling because they're overclocking stuff. Because I'm not doing that. Now, last but not least, this is all going to go into this Lian Landcool 205 case. So it is time for me to stop talking and start doing. So here's the general plan of attack. First thing we're going to do is get the case out of here and make sure that it's properly set up for what we're going to do. Once we get the case out, the very next thing that I do is I get the power supply in. The reason I do that is because I want the power supply in place and secure before the motherboard goes in. Because if you get the motherboard in and then you have trouble with the power supply, you have a big, heavy hunk of metal that you can accidentally drop on your motherboard, giving you problems you don't want. So power supply, then motherboard. Once the motherboard is in, we get the CPU in. Once the CPU is in, I will probably do CPU cooler. And then from there, it's RAM and hard drive and video card, and we try to boot the darn thing. Fingers crossed. Okay, so first up, let's get this case open. Alright, so this case has a tempered glass window, which I don't actually care about. I may, at some point in time, take this to work where I have access to a laser etcher and maybe put a cool design or something on that. In the meantime, I'll manage. It looks decent. This case, from what I understand, and I haven't seen any paperwork in it, so I'm hoping there might be some kind of instructions or something inside, says that it has the ability to mount water, or the fans, the radiator for the water cooling in the front, which is what I want to do because my computer generally goes under my desk. Alright, so it looks like it has a separate, and this is actually really nice because it helps avoid the problem that I was just talking about. Separate area for the power supply down here that has a wall between the two. So having this wall is really nice in case you're doing any work in the bottom of the case. Drastically reduces the chance of things falling and hitting the motherboard. So this is actually a pretty decent case design. So I got this case on sale. It was like a third off. So far, so good. Alright. So we see some options here for how we hook the buttons up. Yeah, so I'm seeing all of the power pins and audio stuff that goes up front, and then I see another connector. I'm not sure what that is. So they are both going up front. Oh, that's probably USB 3. All right. About computer innards when I was a kid on my dad's 8086. Now back then, building a computer was actually really tough. You needed to know a lot of little tips and tricks, like when you had multiple hard drives, they all had, you'd chain them on the same ribbon cable, but then the last drive, there was a twist in the ribbon cable, and that's how you knew which drive was the last drive. So the last drive was actually identified by where on the cable it went, that kind of thing. It's way easier today. It's harder to mess things up. Things generally only plug in one spot. So I am a fan of modern computer design, because it used to be that building a machine was an all-day affair, and it's really not anymore. All right, so these look like SATA power. Oh, yeah. Looks like there's a couple others in there, but mostly I don't think we're going to need that. Here's the main power. Here's supplemental power for like graphics cards type things. Header thing. More cables. So many. Wow, lots of options. Okay, this big bad bar right there, that's going to be... these are what go to the motherboard. So one side on the power supply, one side on the motherboard. So this is also the power supply. They've gotten more... Well, I don't know if they're actually more compact or if they just seem that way. Certainly they seem lighter. It used to be, I feel like power supplies used to be big honking things. Certainly when you were dealing with, big 1 kilowatt power supplies and stuff. They're pretty massive, pretty heavy. All right. How do I want to mount this? I want to mount this so. In here, this is the front, here's the back, right? There's a vent down here on the bottom and a solid panel on top. So when I mount my power supply, I want to make sure that this fan is pointed down through here, right? And these feet give it a lot of altitude. So it's going to be pointed down that way so that it can breathe, as opposed to pointed up in the metal thing where it can't breathe and it will destroy my computer. So the radiator for my all-in-one cooling can go either at the top or the front. In my case, I'm definitely going to put it on the front because I mount my computers under my desk because I have a standing desk. So that means that the desk is going to be right above this, and so they won't be able to breathe well. So all of my major cooling is going to be an intake there. Okay. Sure. Ah, yep. See, look at this. Whole bunch of stuff in the case too. Yeah. Oh my gosh! Here's a relic from another age. Came with a CD of drivers. Yep. Well, we're not going to need that. Here we go. All right, we're going to pick you up. Have you come hang out over here. You can see down into the case as I work and or screw up. So, I thought this might have a replaceable input faceplate here. Doesn't seem like that is the case for this motherboard and for this case. There we go. Just push it in, snaps into place. So what that does, when it snaps in, is here on the back, these inputs then align with that really nicely, and you hear a little click as that goes into place. Now that that's into place, all the little screw standoffs here, right, should be very close to where they want to be. And so you'll see around all of these screw standoffs, there's little beads of solder. Not actually sure what those little beads of solder are for, but that's always around the screw mounting positions. So you can see them here, over there, yeah, over there on that one. Same thing down here. So there's a little semi-ring around where that goes in that corner. There we go. On that bad boy. So that's how you know the locations of the screws, or where the screws are supposed to go. Now I'll find my collection of itty-bitty screws. And like before, you want to get them in to start with pretty loose. Right. Don't want to go super crazy with it. Nope. Drop the screw. That's what the screwdriver is for. Yoink. Oh no. Just got words. I mentioned that I like this because it's narrow. Get into tight places. There it is. Well, so I have to remove this anyway. well, there's the screw that I dropped. Now, again, normally I would do the CPU next, but since I've already pulled up this heatsink, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just do the M2 drive while I already have that up, and then I'm going to resecure that since most of the screws are done in this case. I just want unboxing of the M2 drive. 1 terabyte of ridiculously fast. I thought about getting the 2 terabyte drive, but it was twice as much, and I don't really need 2 terabytes now. And if I do decide in the future that I want 2 terabytes, I have another M2 slot, and I can just add another terabyte or 2 if I want. Part of this install. There it goes. It's getting there, getting my finger under. It's like a little hunk of Captain tape. In my fingernail under. It was tricky, but I got it. I thought those were just brass or something. You know, they got little covers on the screws. Alright, now we've installed this standoff. Now that we've installed that standoff, this drive, hook it right in here, like this. And well, oop. Press it in a little bit. Right, and then it's going to want to poke up like that. So that's good. see what I'm up to. Visit, which normally I'm all about. However, this time I might make a little bit of an exception. A couple $1,000 worth of computing equipment all sitting around. Here we go. There we go. That's nice and snug, and it fits in there just fine.
I tried to be on time for once, but I still lose my mind when you are on my phone and I don't have to be alone. Oh my, your kitchen floor is cold.
How you doing? We have a visitor. Watson has come to explore and examine everything. Do me a favor though, dog. Don't move any screws. Yep. Watson, leave it. Thank you. Good boy. Watson. You get +1 reward. Go see your mother.
Cause you are in the same room, touch me like DiCaprio. How hard can it be? Just love me like lovers do. Trouble seems so far away that I don't know your name yet. How hard can it be? Just touch me like I'm the one. Cause we are always strangers, acting just like lovers do. How hard can it be? Just love me like lovers do. Trouble seems so far away that I don't know your name yet. How hard can it be? Just love me like I'm the one. Cause we always.
These will just go in a row. Power LED plus. Power LED minus. And power switch. There we go. I lied to make you mine. Like guns are violent inside. When you are in the bathroom, shower in your bed. To touch the top. This triangle matches with that triangle. It goes in there and it sits beautifully. And then you push down the lever and it doesn't want to come out. That's all there is to it. CPU's in place.
Oh my, your dirty hands are cold. But you are in the bed now, talking like DiCaprio. How hard can it be? Just love me like lovers do. Trouble seems so far away that I don't know your name yet. How hard can it be? Just touch me like I'm the one.
From the CPU, to the front of this machine. And in between there and there is the RAM. So we're just going to get this RAM in.
Cause we are only strangers, acting just like lovers do. How hard can it be? Just like lovers do. Trouble seems so far away, but I don't know your name yet. How hard can it be? Just like cause we are only strangers, acting just like lovers do.
So here somewhere are the screw nuts. Dog wants to come check these out again. He came with the name once, and I'm wondering if he should have been Curious George. So it's interesting because this all-in-one water cooler is far more convincing. Oh, sorry, should have done the diagonal one next. Far more convincing and far less terrifying than some of the stock Intel cooling fans I've installed on stuff in the past, or some of the aftermarket stuff where you're really clamping down on it. A good connection. That is true. Hey Watson, welcome back. Welcome back, dog. Look who we have. Look at that. Look at that dog. He's looking at all the giant piles of recycling. Doesn't know what to make of it. Don't try eating the CD-ROM again. I know. It's old technology and should be destroyed. However, you want to leave it? Attaboy. My wife is being very kind. So looking at this radiator, it has a bunch of screws, mounts for the front. So it looks like I'll just screw on right there. So there's your radiator. It goes right up front. Now this is actually kind of interesting because this is where hard drives used to go, right? Is on the front of the PC, but we don't do that much anymore. hard to believe my first computer was an IBM PC XT 8086, 640K RAM, 10 megabyte hard drive. 10 megabytes. That's it. It's just a couple of songs in an MP3 player now. And that holds everything. Operating system, word processor, a couple games. Cables out of the way. Make sure there's plenty of room with those cables. You want these USB-C ones. Just gonna unplug those for a second. So I can always plug those back in. Guard plate completely for a sec, just so that I have lots of room to maneuver this big honkin' video card. There we go. So clearly some cable management needs to be done in here, but the computer is together. All right, so now I'm just gonna button it back up and we're gonna see if it powers on. switching on the power supply. All right, and I'm getting blinky lights coming from somewhere. Motherboard and whatnot has noticed that the power supply has power, but I haven't hit the main power switch. There it goes. It's on. Let's switch the input. And so now comes most important stage of any fledgling build, the troubleshooting. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. We'll see what happens. Alright, so after a lot of trial and error and more than a little bit of cursing, I found my problem. Found a couple of problems. One of the RAM modules, one of the four, was not seated properly, and so that was causing the post issues. But then there was also an issue that it just needed me to pull the battery off the motherboard and really let it reset. So that was one main issue. While I was in there, I was looking around, I realized I had forgotten to plug in the front case fans to the motherboard. So don't forget to do that because the radiator fans are really important. So other than that, things are pretty good, actually. It seems to be computing. It has booted. It is doing some processing. It found the hard drive no problem for shot once I was able to get some video out and some useful information going. The RAM was the big issue, that it wasn't providing me much info. But once I got that dealt with, seemed to be up and running. So this machine, at this point, I'm just going to do a standard Windows install, and we will pick up from there after the installation of Windows with a fresh machine, nice and clean, and install Unity and the other tools we do for machine learning.